Trade deadline has come and gone, and the Jaguars did not leave empty. They get a wide receiver, the one that everybody had been talking about, Jacoby Myers, from the Raiders.
You are Locked On Jaguars, your daily Jacksonville Jaguars podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
It is your team every day here on Locked On Jaguars. We thank you for making us your first listen. My name is Tony Wiggins. Y'all know that. And I am your host of the Locked On Jaguars podcast that you can find wherever you get your podcasts each and every day. Make sure you tap in so you do not miss an episode like the one that's on right now. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5. And if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Shout out to those everydayers who join us each and every day. And thank you for joining us also. If you're not an everydayer, I'm going to do my best to make sure that you become one. Here's what we're going to talk about today. A quick rundown of tried, didn't try. That's where we're going to end up. I'll explain why it's harder than people think to make trades. What it means for the wide receivers that are on the roster now and in the future. And we're going to start talking about what Jacoby Myers does now and perhaps even later. Shout out to James Gladstone for going out and getting his people. Jacoby Myers is a good football player. Jacoby Myers is probably better suited for the F position, which is a slot position. But the one thing that he has shown that he can do is catch the ball in traffic, catch the ball in the middle. He knows exactly where the soft spots are. He's a real good player. And he was just in a situation where it was like, hey, I don't want to be here no more, man, especially if y'all ain't going to commit to me for the future and pay me. With the Raiders, this is the third time the Jaguars have played a team and signed a player or traded for a player immediately after that. I know everyone knows about Colin Saunders, but the quarterback, Gus Bradley's kid, they spoke to him on the field before the game, apparently in San Francisco. At least there's pictures of it, not him, but they spoke to his dad, Gus Bradley. And it doesn't mean that they were talking about him, but deductive reason, it kind of tells you that that's what happened. All right, so let's get back to Jacoby Myers. We'll talk later about what they didn't do that everybody wants them to do or wanted them to do. I think Jacoby Myers helps this team immediately, right away, mainly for two reasons. One, even with a healthy Travis Hunter, they needed to do this. It's the perpetual push to try to get your team to be better. It's never being satisfied. And that's the thing about it. And we don't have, we can have access to all 22 and all of that, all we want. The thing about watching tape is you don't know what they were asked to do. You don't know what they were taught to do. And you don't know the real issues that the staff, along with the personnel department and the position coaches, have come up with. They're not going to tell you their warts. They're not. But in self-scouting, in all of the self-scouting that they do, in all of the self-assessments that they do, what they're thinking and what they're feeling will be told to you more about what they eventually do. And I know we live in a business where everyone is always trying to guess and stay ahead of everything and say, okay, they're doing this for this reason, they're doing that for that reason. Well, I always like to take the approach of, okay, maybe they'll do this, maybe they'll do that. If they do, it's for this reason or that reason. But what they end up doing, much like the draft, will tell you exactly how they felt or what they felt. That's why it's not really cool to get a big headache and do all of those mental gymnastics by just getting in arguments over people about what this team may or may not need. Nobody knows that more than them, all right? I think this is a move that they were going to make, regardless of the injuries. And I know that's where everyone was going to go because one thing is evidence. Now, granted, I wasn't the one that first started talking about Jacoby Myers. A whole bunch of people were. But I did, however, I do have evidence that you can go back and find on the crossover from last Thursday that I did with Q Myers of Locked On Raiders. And I told him, I joked with him and said, your brother, we're going to take your brother from you. And then he informed me that it's funny that you say that because I kind of got a good relationship with him and his dad. And we joke about that kind of stuff. And the reason why I brought that up is not that I was first, not that I was the only dude saying it, not that I was the only person talking about it, The reason why I brought that up is because that was before I actually recorded that Wednesday morning. That was prior to Travis Hunter getting hurt. So it goes to show you that this isn't just injury based. This is based on, I would say it's based more on Brian Thomas Jr. having that early season slump, because they didn't count on that. And you can never count on things happening that you don't expect, like injuries or even temporary things or people adjusting to a new system. But the thing that Brian Thomas Jr. has been going through, I can guarantee you the Jaguars, when they took this job over, and a lot of people saying, well, the only reason Liam took the job is because of Trevor and all of that stuff. He took the job because it's one of 32 jobs and it's life-changing money to take it. That's why you take it, right? The other stuff doesn't hurt. I can guarantee you one of the things that they did not count on was Brian Thomas Jr. having a slump, the yips or whatever they call it, or having regression from what they saw on tape last year. That is absolutely something that they didn't expect. And I believe that they were counting on BT to be the same guy or even better than he was last year, with improved quarterback play, with better offensive line, with the more emphasis on the running game, all of these things. And then you think about it, they went and got Dyami Brown for the speed, and then they added Travis Hunter. I can guarantee you when they went out there and broke camp, wide receiver was probably not on their list of things that they needed. Add in the slump, even though they said there was no interest in trading BT, they're going to work with him. They believe in his talent, and I believe that. And then you add in the fact that it took Travis a little bit longer than maybe some people expected. I don't know if you can say longer than they expected, but longer than a lot of people expected for him to have a really, really big impact. And I know the coaches have been blamed for that a whole bunch, and I've really defended them on that. But add in maybe the fact that they gave Dyami Brown $10 million and it's turning into the Dante Moncrief experiment, where you pay a dude a one-year deal for $10 million on a prove-it deal, and he ain't proved it for whatever reason, whether it be injuries, being banged up, opportunity, whatever. The bottom line is they need more production at the wide receiver position, and this is exactly what they addressed today. And they got a guy who's a very, very, very good, complete wide receiver. Now, he'll be 29 when he plays his first game with Jacksonville. Normally, you don't trade guys for half a season when they're in their 20s, and then if you do re-sign him, he's 30 years old. He's a little bit different. I think a guy like him, he hasn't slowed down. You get at least another 2 years out of him until he's 32, maybe even 33. So there's a possibility and a probability also for a contract extension. And I know a lot of people are saying we gave up a fourth and a sixth for a 9-game rental. I don't think that's the case at all. I think they're doing this to take a real nice look-see. And it's possible that the 4 receivers that they go into, if they re-sign him and Parker Washington next year, will be Brian Thomas Jr., Travis Hunter, Jacoby Myers, and Parker Washington. And that's a pretty good foursome. And you can never have too many. As you see right now, the Jaguars are banged up and they're hurt. I'm going to talk about what it means for the wide receivers on the roster. And I'm going to go through each and every one of them and tell you exactly how this affects them. More on the trade deadline show here today. I did it late just for the fact that I wanted to wait and see if the Jaguars were going to do anything. I'll tell you everything that they tried to do too in segment 3, but we'll get back and talk about the wide receiver room, just specifically each player. We'll do that in just a second here on Locked On Jaguars. All right, today's show is sponsored and brought to you by Built. Nobody likes paying rent, but if you must, you might as well get something for it. That's where Built, B-I-L-T, comes in. Built is changing the game by turning your rent payment into rewards you can actually use. When you pay rent through Built, you earn flexible points that can be redeemed towards hundreds of hotels and airlines, a future rent payment, and your next Lyft ride, and more. But Built isn't just about rent. It's about rewarding you around your entire neighborhood. All of the things that you like doing in your neighborhood, the pet groomer, taco spot down the street, all of those places absolutely accept Built, and it processes you very, very conveniently. Turn your rent into rewards and start earning points around your neighborhood by going to joinbuilt.com/lockedonnfl. That's joinbuilt, JOINBILT.com/lockedonnfl. Make sure to use that link so they know we are the ones who sent you. All right, Locked On Jaguars live. We're actually live going here today here on Locked On Jaguars. I'm Tony Wiggins, the host of the Locked On Jaguars podcast. News of the day is the Jacksonville Jaguars at the trade deadline made a trade. James Gladstone does not play. He's made 6 trades since August, since they broke camp, and he's still at it. The Jaguars still have a plethora of picks in next year's draft. I think the number sits at 11. I'm really interested. They have a 2nd and 3 thirds, so that's where they're going to do a lot of their moving and shaking. But right now, Jacoby Myers is coming to help this team with BT being in a slump and banged up. Dyami Brown also being banged up. Of course, we know that Travis Hunter's on IR. They got some spirited play from Tim Jones and Trammell the other day to go along with Parker Washington with his consistent effort. But they needed to add more. They needed to add more, and they even needed to add more before all of those guys got banged up. One thing you notice with them is it is an ongoing, perpetual, nonstop evaluation of the roster. They're not going to be able to make trades after today. Obviously, this is the deadline. And unless someone is just released, picked up off the street, or gets cut, or they make a move on someone's practice squad, what you're seeing basically from your core of players, the main guys that they have out there that they're leading with, this is what they're going to do. I wouldn't necessarily say stuck, but kind of I would say stuck. This is what they're going to have. And these are the people that they're going to have moving forward. These are the guys that they're going to run this thing out. They're 5 and 3. They're going to run these next 9 games, and hopefully division and playoffs and all of that stuff will continue to be in the conversation for Jacksonville. But it was a great move by them, and it doesn't cost them a whole bunch. I bet you some of this stuff is stuff that they got from somebody else in moves that they made. And James Gladstone has done a really, really good job. But I like the fact that no one can rest. Just because you're okay and you compete, that's not enough. If he can help you get better and improve, you go make this move. And that's exactly what they did. What it means I'll just start with him since he's the new guy. New guys go first. Jacoby Myers. I think he has a chance to ball out, the professionalism. And that's one of the things, by the way, I've heard about him. Super, super professional. Gets in and out of breaks. Catches the ball in traffic. Those are the things, very, very reliable. Davante Adams, his former teammate, of course, first ballot Hall of Famer Davante Adams, has said that he is one of the most slept-on wide receivers in the league. There's a clip all over social media with him saying that. So it's a good ad for the Jaguars. And I think a guy like that will understand football enough that he can help this team immediately. Does it mean he's going to be here next year? I think it does. You know, people can talk about compensatory picks and all of that. I don't think, even if they don't re-sign him, I don't believe that he's going to sign a deal in the offseason, unless he tears it up, of course. That's going to put them in the high compensatory range in terms of that. I think this is a move where the Jaguars are saying, no, we like him. We like him as a player. A lot of rumors out there that Romeo Doubs was their first choice. Sometimes you don't get your first choice and you move on. Just like the draft, you move on to your next guy. And that's not an insult, because if you're the next guy that they move on to, that means you were a part of a small group of people that they know can help you. So it's certainly not a slight on him. But I think this could turn him into somebody that is going to get maybe a 2 or 3 year extension, not necessarily a whole lot of money. That leads me to Dyami Brown. Unless something turns around, I think he's one and done here in Jacksonville. And that's just my opinion. It's not based on anything that I've heard from anyone in the building or anyone that's in the know. That's just my opinion, because Parker Washington is also due up for some change. And he's good on special teams as well. I just think that there's a way you can pay both of those guys to be a part of, especially if the Jaguars make some nice little run here and get themselves in a position to win this division and or make the playoffs as a wild card, and then they start this bond and building a bond. Guys will want to be where they are sure about where things are, especially if the money, you can always, especially if we don't have any state taxes on income. So whatever the difference in money can be made up by that. A lot of times people overplay that a little bit and overstate the importance of that. But you're talking about the difference maybe between like $1 million. Well, with the kind of money that I'm talking about, both of those guys making, especially with BT and Travis both being on rookie deals, that is a super, super important part of this. It doesn't matter that you sign your third and fourth receiver to make more than those guys. Those guys understand what it is because it's business. And you'll have 2 young receivers now after this season with 3 years, and if you include the 5th-year option on BTJ, 3 years for him, 4 years for Travis. That means that you can play around with a 2 or 3 year extension for both of those guys that I just mentioned. So if I'm looking at it correctly, that's the way I see it. I think you re-sign Parker Washington. I also believe you re-sign and do a team-friendly deal after you take a little bit of a look-see with Jacoby Myers. And then all of a sudden your receiving room is set. Add in Brenton Strange because he's going to come back from injury and maybe find you the way that they always do, this staff at least. I think the receiver position is one of the pluses for everyone in this lineage or pedigree of KOC or Sean McVay or Les Snead or whatever. I believe they'll go out in the draft and also get a young dude, maybe a young dude with that size and range, that 6'4" dude that is a red zone target, as well as a dude that is a very good route runner. It's going to be a boatload of them. And like I say, they have 3 4th-round picks. So it's something that could be easily addressed next year. I like the move. I like the move short term. I like the move with the potential that it has long term. A lot of this really, really does depend on 2 things. Whatever the diagnosis or the prognosis is for Travis Hunter with his knee, and no one knows. I think the Jaguars are trying to figure it out, and their ability and how they're going to use him on one side of the ball or the other, or BT. How does BT play the rest of the season? That's going to be a critical thing to discuss. Something else that is huge to discuss, and we're going to do it in just a second, is we're going to talk about what they tried to do based on rumors, what they were able to do, and why I think folks sometimes misunderstand whether or not they're actually going out there trying hard enough. We'll talk about that more here in just a second on Locked On Jaguars. And today's show is sponsored by our friends over at FanDuel. The NBA is back, man, and there's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you missed the start of a game or want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. It keeps everything and every game exciting, especially when your team is the one making that late push. So right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So head to FanDuel.com to sign up and play our game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. All right, riding with the comments already. I see people telling me that he's slow, doesn't separate, saying it's an insult to Parker Washington. It's not an insult to Parker Washington, because if you know what you're talking about, you would understand that Parker Washington is actually better out wide than he is in the slot. So pause and kill all of the negativity, especially when you're loud and wrong. So we'll just keep moving on from that. I heard from the source how good of a player that Jacoby Myers is, and the tape will show you what you want to see. You can form your own opinions on that all you want to, but sometimes folks get real loud and get real wrong on you real quick. What didn't they do? As I was going through social media today and putting out shorts and talking about the things that the Jaguars were planning on doing, trying to do, rumored to be doing, I kept hearing a lot of people talk about Quinnen Williams. I think Quinnen Williams is great. I think he's a great player. And there's a quote unquote great player thing that I have when you're talking about positional value. I often say, I don't care if he's a weak side linebacker or a running back or some kind of position that people don't value. If he's a great player, that turns out he's a good football player like Levante David in his prime. He's a weak side linebacker. Doesn't matter. He's a good football player. He's a great football player, a Hall of Famer. You figure it out. You go get guys like that and you put them on your team. The other thing that I often say about great players is even if they don't quite play the position where you need them, some players are so good that they can do anything. I mentioned Jalen Carter for Philly doing that. He is by design a 3 technique. He lined up at nose guard in the Super Bowl because they had other guys that could play 3 technique, and then they were playing a 3-4, right? I think sometimes people don't understand that when you see DT, which stands for defensive tackles, that all of them aren't the same. They have different responsibilities. You line up 2-3 techniques that are just decent to good players, you're going to get run on all day long. That's what happens. And then if you line up 2 nose tackle types to say, okay, well, look, I want you to go, you line up at the 0 and put this other guy over here at a 1 or whatever. We're going to line up 2 fat guys in the middle. You could do that too. I remember Sam Adams and the late Saragusa, when they did that in Baltimore. They had 2 350-pound dudes lined up at defensive tackle. You can get away with that too. But what you can't get away with is thinking that you're going to put 2 of anything together and you're not going to be weak at one thing. If you run a base 4-3 and you put 2 big old 340-pound dudes side by side, you know what you're not going to get? Interior pass rush, unless you go to a sub package. And then teams will just throw the ball on first down. If you put 2-3 techniques to interior pass rushers like Quinnen Williams, although I'm going to give Quinnen Williams a little bit more consideration because he falls into that great player category that I'm talking about. Next to Eric Armstead, people are going to try to run the ball down your throat all day. Sometimes you have to understand that. If you go out and get a CB, which is a cornerback, well, a guy that plays better off or plays better in press man aren't the same. A guy that plays nickel isn't the same. If you have 2 outside corners and you need a nickel or a slot, don't go get another dude that's an outside corner and just think and assume that he can play slot. And if you have a cornerback that loses a step, everybody's not Charles Woodson or Jalen Ramsey where they can go play free safety. I remember Bill Belichick saying about his own player, Hall of Famer Darrelle Revis, he can't play safety. And I think sometimes people don't even understand it with the wide receiver position. And that's why folks are sitting here going back and forth with me about Jacoby Myers and Parker Washington. Don't assume because Parker's 5'10" that he's a slot receiver at best. No, he's not. He's better outside. They said that in the draft. That's why he fell in the 6th round. He was very productive. But one of the reasons he fell in the draft because it was perplexing. Some people like their X or their Z, their flanker, or their split end. Some people like him to be a certain size. He was built like a slot, but he played better somewhere else. Turns out he's good enough to play in the slot. But this is what we want people to do. We want people to come here and find out what their superpower is. You remember that term that they keep using down there? We don't want to just get guys, okay, well, he can do this. But if it's not his superpower, then you're still at some point shortchanging yourself. So the idea is to get the best absolute players you can whose superpower lines directly up with your scheme, right? Or if he's a great player, I'll give you another example. Aaron Donald. This is like the GOAT of the GOATs when it comes to defensive tackles. Aaron Donald is a pure 3 technique who ideally would line up in a 4-3. You know, Aaron Donald played the 3-4 with the Rams at the end of his career, even though they did go to even front sometimes, but mainly they had 3 down linemen and Aaron Donald was one of them. Jarrell Casey did it. Jarrell Casey was by nature a 3 technique, but he was good enough to play that 3 technique or that DL spot in a 3-man front, in an odd front. He was good enough to do it when he played for Mike Vrabel with the Titans. So the great player part of it, it really cancels out the superpower at positions, because the dudes I'm talking about, their superpower is just being on the field. So when you want to say, well, they could have got Quinnen Williams. Okay, so Quinnen Williams has been in the league 7 years. He's 28. He'll be 29, I think, next year, right? You're going to give up a first-round pick for him? Dallas did, but that's Dallas. That's not the Jaguars. You're going to give a first-round pick for him? Here's what we got to do. Decompress a little bit and understand this and just think about it this way. Trent Baalke picked some really, really good players. I've always said I thought he could do better at drafting, but he wasn't terrible. I said he was bad at team building. I'm going to show you the difference. You know who is one of the best drafting teams in the NFL? Dallas. Make no mistake about it. The Dallas Cowboys, when you look at their drafts, draft some serious ball players, and they lose a lot of them in free agency. You know who's one of the worst team building drafting teams or team building teams in the NFL? Same team, Dallas. Those two things, while they can be joined together and while they lean on each other, are not the same. It's almost as if Trent was drafting guys saying, okay, I'm getting you good players. Go do whatever you're supposed to do with them and figure it out. No, you can figure it out with a bunch of great players. But if you got a whole bunch of guys that are cool, but they don't fit and they don't mix and they don't blend, and you're getting them at the wrong time in your organization when you could go somewhere else, what you get is the imbalanced effort, the questions, the wondering why it doesn't work. Celebrate the fact that you have alignment now. Celebrate the fact that it seems like, at least from the outside looking in, that what James Gladstone wants lines exactly up. It lines up exactly with what Liam Cohen wants to do. That means you have taken this whole chemistry thing and thrown it right out of the window because it's already built in to the machine. Add in Tony Boselli and the way that he processes things and the way he wants this team to play and what he's able to do. Now you have that perfect alignment that we're talking about. It's not just about drafting the best player you can. It's about drafting the best player you can for you and not having to go through all of this rigmarole of trying to make a dude adjust. The one thing the great Bill Polian used to say, and I disagree with him about a lot of stuff, mainly the Lamar Jackson thing, but then a whole bunch of stuff after that. The one thing he did say that made a bunch of sense: don't be drafting or paying dudes to come here and do things you didn't see them do. Because now you're adding something, you're adding guesswork, right? It's already guesswork to a certain extent in the draft because it's imperfect. And now you're adding another element of guesswork, and the expense is a first or second or third round pick and hoping that they can fit what you want to do. Just be grateful, Jaguars, that you don't have that problem anymore at all. You also don't have a problem with me being here at Locked On Jaguars because I'll be here every single day. I'll get the comments from James Gladstone and Liam Cohen, and we'll discuss that and dissect that tomorrow. Also, real quick, those that wanted a pass rusher, show me the pass rusher that's available that doesn't make you redundant. You don't have a first-round pick. You're going to give them a second-round pick for who? Point them out to me. Point out the valuable point out the valuable dude that was out there available that the Jaguars could have went and got that's going to take either Trayvon or Josh Allen off the field without getting rid of one of them. Just point him out to me. It's easy to sit and say what you would do if it's not there, right? It's easy to do that. If I gave you $25 and told you to go get me an Angus cut of a 1 inch or 1.5 inch Angus steak, ribeye, tomahawk. Show me what you come back with if it ain't out there for you to get it for that price. That's the thing that we need to sometimes consider when we talk about this stuff. It's easier than said than done. But we'll discuss what they did. We'll do more of that tomorrow on Locked On Jaguars. Make sure you check out Locked On NFL too, twice a day. I'm about to do an episode here in a few minutes where we're going to discuss everything from around the league, and we're going to use the help of local experts from those markets that keep their finger on the pulse of the team that's going to tell us all exactly what those things mean for each club. So make sure you check out Locked On NFL today, and then tomorrow morning with Tyler Rowland. The show comes on twice a day. All right, man, it's been real with you. 30 minutes, a little bit after 30 minutes, but we appreciate you joining us. Thank you for joining Locked On Jaguars. It is your team every day.